My name is Jessica, and I'm 49 years old. From the outside, I had it all. A beautiful home, a loving husband, and 2 bright, successful children. For 20 years, I was the conductor of a flawless symphony of family life. Every note was perfect, every instrument was in tune, every performance was met with applause. I was the perfect mom, the one who baked organic cupcakes for the bake sale, who volunteered for every school committee, whose children had perfectly coordinated outfits and a schedule packed with enriching activities. My house was spotless, our family photos were Christmas card worthy, and our lives were a curated masterpiece of suburban success. I wore the title of perfect mom like a badge of honor. It was my identity, my purpose, my life's work. But what I didn't realize, what I refused to see for 2 decades, was that my masterpiece was a forgery. The beautiful music was drowning out the sound of my children's suffering, and the pursuit of perfection had cost me the one thing I claimed to be perfecting, a real, loving, and authentic relationship with my kids. My obsession with perfection didn't come from a place of malice. It came from a place of fear. I grew up in a home that was chaotic and unpredictable. My own mother was overwhelmed, and our lives felt constantly on the brink of falling apart. I craved order, I craved control, I craved the feeling of safety that a well-managed life seemed to promise. So when I became a mother, I swore it would be different. I would be the opposite of my own mother. I would be in control. I would be organized. I would be perfect. I thought that if I could just control every detail, if I could just eliminate every variable, if I could just create a perfect environment, then I could protect my children from the chaos and pain that I had experienced. I thought that perfection was a shield. I didn't realize it was a cage. The early years were my golden age of perfectionism. My daughter, Emily, and my son, Jacob, were my beautiful, malleable little projects. I was the architect of their childhood, and I left nothing to chance. I remember the annual family photo shoot. It was a military operation. I would spend weeks planning the coordinating outfits, scouting the perfect location, scheduling the photographer for the golden hour. The day of the shoot was a pressure cooker of my anxiety. I would be barking orders, plastering fake smiles on my face, and hissing at my kids to just look happy. One year, Emily, who was about 6, wanted to wear her favorite bright yellow rain boots. They were her most prized possession. They clashed horribly with the pastel color scheme I had so carefully chosen. I told her no. She burst into tears. I told her to stop crying or she would ruin her makeup. I look at that photo now and it makes me sick. We all look perfect. Our clothes are perfect, our smiles are perfect, the lighting is perfect. But my daughter's eyes are empty. She is not there. She is a perfect little doll in my perfect little picture. And her bright yellow rain boots, the one thing that would have shown her personality, her joy, her authentic self, are sitting in the closet. I had chosen the perfect picture over my actual child. Then there was the science fair. Jacob, who was in 4th grade, was a curious, inventive little boy. He loved taking things apart and putting them back together. He wanted to build a Rube Goldberg machine for his project. It was ambitious, it was messy, it was bound to be imperfect. I, of course, had a better idea. A volcano, a classic, controllable, and most importantly, a guaranteed winner. I bought the kit, I directed the construction, I wrote the note cards. Jacob's job was to paint it and to stand there and smile. He won first prize. I was so proud. I took a picture of him with his blue ribbon, another perfect moment for the scrapbook. But Jacob never entered the science fair again. I had taught him a terrible lesson, that the process of learning, of exploring, of creating, was not as important as the outcome. I had taught him that his own ideas were not as good as mine. I had taught him that winning was more important than wondering. I had, in my pursuit of the perfect project, extinguished his scientific spark. As they entered their teenage years, the cracks in my perfect facade began to show. My children were no longer malleable little projects. They were becoming people, with their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own desires. and those thoughts, feelings, and desires often did not align with my perfect plan. My response to this was not to listen, not to adapt, not to celebrate their emerging individuality. My response was to double down on my control. When Emily was 15, she came home with her hair dyed black. It was a dramatic teenage statement. It was a cry for identity. I saw it as a betrayal. I saw it as a deliberate act of sabotage against the perfect family image I had so carefully constructed. We had a terrible fight. I didn't ask her why she did it. I didn't ask her how it made her feel. I just told her how it made me look. I told her she had embarrassed me. I told her she had to diet back. The message was clear. Your appearance is not your own. It is a reflection of me, and it must be perfect. With Jacob, the pressure took a different, more insidious form. He was a smart kid, and he was terrified of disappointing me. He knew that anything less than an A was considered a failure in our house. He would study for hours, his face pale with anxiety. He developed stomach aches before every big test. He was a bundle of stress, a boy who had learned that his worth was measured by his grade point average. One day, I got a call from his math teacher. Jacob had been caught cheating on a test. I was mortified. I was furious. I went to the school and I read him the riot act in the principal's office. I told him how disappointed I was, how he had thrown away his future. I never once asked him why he did it. I never once considered that the pressure I had put on him had become so unbearable that he felt like cheating was his only option. I was so focused on the imperfection of his action that I was completely blind to the perfection of its cause, my own relentless, soul-crushing pressure. The breaking point, the moment the entire beautiful, perfect house of cards came tumbling down, was on Emily's 18th birthday. She was a senior in high school, a few months away from leaving for college. I had, of course, planned the perfect party. A catered dinner, a string quartet, a guest list of all the right people. It was a party for me, not for her. Halfway through the evening, I found her in her room, crying. I was annoyed. She was ruining her perfect party. I asked her what was wrong, and she just looked at me, and with a voice that was shaking with years of suppressed anger and pain, she said, "I can't do this anymore, Mom. I can't be your perfect daughter anymore. I don't even know who I am. I only know who you want me to be, and I hate her." And then she handed me a letter she had written but had been too scared to give me. I sat on her perfectly made bed in her perfectly decorated room, and I read the words that shattered my perfect world. She wrote about the rain boots. She wrote about the black hair. She wrote about feeling like a doll, a prop, a character in my play. She wrote about the crushing weight of my expectations. She wrote about her desperate, suffocating need to be loved for who she was, not for who I wanted her to be. She wrote, "I don't need a perfect mom. I just need a mom." That letter was the beginning of my undoing and my salvation. For the first time, I was forced to see the wreckage that my perfectionism had left in its wake. I saw a daughter who was leaving for college without a sense of her own identity. I saw a son who was crippled by anxiety and a fear of failure. I saw two children who had learned to hide their true selves from me, who had learned that my love was conditional, that it was something to be earned through performance and compliance. I had been so busy managing the image of a happy family that I had failed to create one. I started going to therapy. It was the hardest, most humbling, and most important thing I have ever done. I sat in a quiet room with a kind stranger, and I unpacked the fear, the control, the anxiety that had been driving me for my entire life. I learned that my perfectionism was not a sign of my strength, but a symptom of my weakness. It was a defense mechanism, a way to protect myself from the messy, unpredictable, and often painful reality of life. I learned that in my desperate attempt to protect my children from the chaos of my own childhood, I had created a different kind of chaos for them, the sterile, airless chaos of a life without authenticity, without spontaneity, without grace. And then I had to do the work of making amends. I had to apologize to my children, not a quick, easy, "I'm sorry," but a deep, painful, and specific apology for the ways in which I had hurt them. I sat with Emily, and I apologized for the rain boots, for the black hair, for making her feel like a prop in my life. I sat with Jacob, and I apologized for the science fair, for the pressure, for making him feel like his worth was tied to his grades. I told them that I was wrong. I told them that my perfectionism was my problem, not theirs. I told them that I loved them for who they were, not for what they did. And I asked for their forgiveness. It was not a magic wand. It did not instantly erase 20 years of damage. But it was a start. It was the beginning of a new kind of relationship, a relationship that was not based on performance, but on presence. A relationship that was not perfect, but was real. I am 49 years old, and I am a recovering perfectionist. I am learning to embrace the mess. I am learning to find the beauty in the imperfect. I am learning to be a gardener, not a carpenter. I am learning to listen more than I talk. I am learning to celebrate my children's quirks, to honor their choices, to be a safe harbor for their messy, beautiful, and imperfect selves. My house is not always clean. My meals are not always organic. My plans do not always work out. And it is wonderful. It is real. It is life. What I know now is that our children do not need us to be perfect. They need us to be present. They need us to be authentic. They need us to be a safe place to fall apart. They need to know that they are loved, not because they are perfect, but because they are ours. The relentless pursuit of perfection is not a form of love. It is a form of fear. And the greatest gift we can give our children is not a perfect life, but the courage to live their own, imperfect, and authentic one. It is the gift of grace, the grace to be human, the grace to make mistakes, the grace to be gloriously, beautifully, and wonderfully imperfect. That is the lesson that took me almost 50 years to learn, and it is the lesson that has finally set us all free. Let's talk about the why. Why do we do this? Why do we, as mothers, fall into this trap of perfectionism? For me, as I said, it was a reaction to the chaos of my own childhood, but I think it's more than that. I think we live in a culture that has turned motherhood into a competitive sport. We are bombarded with images of perfect mothers, with their perfect children in their perfect homes, and we are told that this is the standard. Social media, of course, is the ultimate accelerant of this. It is a highlight reel of everyone else's curated perfection, and it can leave you feeling like you are constantly failing. I was a Pinterest mom before Pinterest even existed. I was constantly scrolling through a mental feed of other mothers who seemed to be doing it better, and I was driven by a desperate need to keep up, to measure up, to prove that I was a good mom. But what is a good mom? I used to think it was a mom who had it all together, a mom who never lost her temper, whose kids were always well-behaved, whose house was always clean, whose life was a testament to her organizational skills. But I've come to believe that a good mom is something else entirely. A good mom is a mom who is real, a mom who is honest about her struggles, a mom who can apologize to her kids when she gets it wrong, a mom who can laugh at herself when she burns the dinner, a mom who can sit in the mess of life, in the mess of her children's feelings, and not try to fix it, but just be present to it. A good mom is not a perfect mom. A good mom is a human mom. And by trying to be the former, I failed for many years to be the latter. The pressure to be perfect creates a terrible, unspoken anxiety in a home. The children feel it. They feel that the environment is not safe for mistakes. They feel that the love is conditional. They learn to be performers, to be actors in the play of the perfect family. They learn to hide their imperfections, to suppress their true feelings, to present a version of themselves that they know will be met with approval. They become, in essence, little perfectionists themselves, driven by the same fear of failure that is driving their mother. And the cycle continues. I see it in my daughter, Emily, even now. She is a successful young woman, a lawyer, and she is incredibly hard on herself. She is terrified of making a mistake at work. She is constantly striving for a level of perfection that is unattainable, and it is making her miserable. And I know with a certainty that breaks my heart that I taught her that. I taught her that her worth is in her performance. I taught her that it is not okay to be human. And now my work is to help her unlearn that lesson. It is to be the voice that tells her, you are enough. You are loved not for what you do, but for who you are. It is okay to make mistakes. It is okay to be imperfect. It is the work of a lifetime for both of us. The antidote to perfectionism is not apathy. It is not about not caring. It is about shifting your focus from the external to the internal. It is about caring less about what your life looks like and more about what it feels like. It is about caring less about your children's accomplishments and more about their character. It is about caring less about being a perfect family and more about being a connected family. So, what does that look like on a practical level? It looks like letting your kid wear the damn rain boots, even if they clash with the outfit. It looks like celebrating the messy, creative process of the Rube Goldberg machine, even if it doesn't win first prize. It looks like asking your teenager why they dyed their hair black instead of just telling them to dye it back. It looks like sitting with your son who is having a panic attack about a test and telling him that you love him no matter what grade he gets. It looks like apologizing over and over again when you get it wrong. It looks like letting your children see you cry, letting them see you struggle, letting them see you be human. It looks like trading your need for control for a deep and abiding faith in your children and in yourself. I am not the mom I was 10 years ago. I am not the mom I was even 5 years ago. I am a work in progress. I still have moments when the old perfectionist rears her head. I still have to consciously choose to let go of the noise and focus on the music, but the difference is that now I have grace for myself. I have compassion for the scared young mother who was just trying to do her best. And I have a new definition of what best means. It doesn't mean perfect, it means present. It means loving. It means real. My relationship with my children is not perfect. It is messy, it is complicated, and it is a work in progress. But it is also more honest, more authentic, and more loving than it has ever been. We are learning to see each other, to hear each other, to forgive each other. We are learning to be a family, not just to look like one. And that, I have come to believe, is the only kind of perfection that truly matters. The letter from Emily was a rock bottom, but it was also a gift. It was a brutal, necessary mirror that forced me to see the truth of what I had created. And the truth was this: in my quest to be the perfect mom, I had become a deeply flawed one. I had prioritized image over intimacy, control over connection, and performance over presence. I had created a family that looked beautiful from the outside, but was hollow on the inside. It was a stage play, and we were all just actors, and I was the frantic, anxious director, trying to make sure no one missed a line. The first step in my recovery was admitting that I had a problem. And my problem was not my children, it was me. It was my fear. It was my deep-seated belief that if I could just control everything, I could prevent anything bad from happening. But life is not controllable, and bad things happen. And our children do not need us to be a shield that protects them from all of life's pain. They need us to be a harbor that they can return to when they are in pain. A place where they can be messy, where they can be sad, where they can be angry, where they can be imperfect, and where they will be loved, not in spite of their imperfections, but because of them. I had to learn to let go of the outcome. This was a huge one for me. I was so attached to the idea of my children being successful, getting into the right colleges, having the right careers, living the right lives. But my definition of success was so narrow, so rigid, so tied to my own values and ambitions. I had to learn to trust that my children had their own definition of success, their own path to follow, and that my job was not to define it for them, but to support them as they discovered it for themselves. This meant celebrating Jacob's passion for video game design, even though I didn't understand it. It meant encouraging Emily to take a gap year to travel, even though I was terrified of her being so far away. It meant letting go of my script for their lives and allowing them to write their own. And I had to learn to have compassion for myself. I had to learn to forgive the young, scared mother who was just trying to do her best with the tools she had. I had to learn that my mistakes did not define me. I had to learn that it is never too late to change, to grow, to become a better version of yourself. And I had to model that for my children. I had to show them that it is okay to be a work in progress. That is perhaps the greatest gift I can give them now, the example of a mother who is not perfect, but who is brave enough to face her own flaws, to do the hard work of changing, and to love herself and them with a grace that is born not of perfection, but of a deep and abiding humanity. So, if you see yourself in my story, if you are a mother who is exhausted from the relentless pursuit of perfection, I want to offer you a different path. It is a path that is messier, that is more unpredictable, that is less controllable, but it is a path that is also more joyful, more authentic, and more loving. It is the path of the good enough mom, the mom who knows that her love is more important than her organic cupcakes, the mom who knows that her presence is more important than her clean house. The mom who knows that her children's character is more important than their accomplishments. The mom who knows that a real, messy, and loving family is infinitely more beautiful than a perfect, sterile, and empty one. It is the path of grace, and it is a path that is available to all of us at any moment. All we have to do is choose it.